Good morning. I'd like to call to order the advisory committee meeting to the Guerra Plaza Revitalization Project for November 20th. Let us begin. Mr. Hess.
Great. Raquel is actually going to be doing the roll call and for this morning. Yes. Thanks.
All righty. Chair Sneddon.
Present.
Vice Chair Wiscombe.
I'm here.
Commissioner Drury.
Here.
Commissioner House.
I'm here.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Commissioner Longstreet.
Here.
Councilmember Harmon.
Here.
Commissioner Perry.
Good morning.
Thank you. Commissioner Peterson.
Here.
Commissioner Edelman. Thank you.
Thank you. Then do we have any announcements or changes to the agenda?
We do, Madam Chair. I just want to make note and make sure that Mr. House understands our apology. We neglected to include him in the agenda. We had used in a previous form, and so Julio Vena was listed as one of the members from Historic Landmarks Commission, and Steve House has taken his place. So that will reflect in the minutes, but just want to make a public apology, Mr. House. Again, sorry for the mistake. Other than that, no other changes.
Thank you. And welcome, Mr. House. Yes. And so shall we continue? Today is a big day. We're going to ask that as we go through this, there will be times for questions, but we really want to get through the holistic picture of all of the concepts and then have time for us to be able to freely discuss. So we'll just, if there are little questions throughout there, but we'll really try to minimize that and have a larger discussion on all the elements together. Commissioner Longstreet, did you have a comment? Oh, no, okay. So Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Perry, if you wouldn't mind, we're going to try and keep unless you're speaking, if you could turn off your video, that would be great. And Leith McKay, I believe you need to share your screen so we can get going on this presentation. Great. So welcome, everyone. Thank you again for your time, for being here. It's always a pleasure to update you on things that are exciting. And this is an exciting meeting. We're looking forward to showing you what we've done in the last 6 to 7 weeks. On the next slide, you'll see our agenda for the day. And as Chair Sneddon said, if you could do a couple things today as you have questions. One, write them down. Two, please make note of the page number in the bottom left-hand corner so that if you've got a specific question on a specific slide that you'll be able to just direct us quickly to which page you had a question on. It'll really speed up the question and answer at the end. And again, allow us to get through this. There will be questions for sure that come to mind, but allow us to get to the end and then we can do the Q&A. The discussion actually at the end will be done topic by topic. So maybe you can think of it that way so that we'll have a topic, everyone will have an opportunity to discuss, and then we'll move on to the next topic. We're also going to try and finish by 10, so we're going to speak quickly. So bear with us. This is the overview. We'll do a brief recap. We're going to see the draft plan. We're going to be talking about materials and plants, art, history, and culture, and lighting. So next slide. So I just want to make sure that we are all reminded of why we're here. So this is the purpose statement. For those who have not been with us in this meeting before, this is the purpose statement that the committee has created to guide the principles for what we're doing here and why we're doing it. So De La Guerra Plaza celebrates and honors the historic heart of our city and provides the flexibility to serve our community's diverse social, cultural, historic, economic, and environmental vitality. So these vitalities are the filter through which we review any and all concepts and ideas that come to the committee and through the committee, making sure that we meet all these vitalities so that the design is consistent and that it's grounded in principle. So next slide. Here's our concept overview. I'm going to start in the upper left-hand corner. We've been working through one idea of what to do about the Washingtonian Folifera California fan palm, that is the historic palm in right near the splash pad. And as we've started developing this design more and more, we realized that hardscape surrounding a plant that a tree that is primarily in the grass family is probably not going to fare well for the tree, and quite frankly it doesn't fit as well in our design since we are trying to move the landscaping toward the edges. So I've met with two different landscape firms in terms of potentially relocating it onto the same property, and we're thinking that it would make a lot of sense to move it over to in front of City Hall, near the corner of Anacapa and De La Guerra Street. It's in a grassy area. It would be much happier there than surrounded by hardscape, and we can celebrate its history through a plaque or some commemoration. But as it's a historic tree, it's clearly going to be an issue. So that's one of the things that we want to talk about. The cost will be about $14,000 to relocate this tree. So that's just information for which we can work through later. Moving down, we still don't have a demand analysis for parking because we don't have a normal. Once we have a normal, we will actually re-engage and do a traffic and demand study for how many cars are coming into this area for City Hall purposes and the surrounding businesses. It may just be a topic we need to push off until later for another time as this project goes through the process. Again, moving down, we are still under the assumption that State Street, for this portion of this of the plaza, that State Street will remain closed, and so it's going to be designed as such, even though there will still be a right-of-way on De La Guerra Street between Anacapa and State Street. And then the trash pickup location is noted there and over in Stork Placita. And that's pretty much it for the overview. We're going to now get into the specifics, and Leif McKay will be guiding us through that. But just wanted to give you, again, just an overview of what we've been working on and the two issues that aren't on the agenda per se. So thank you. I'm really excited about the way this is coming together, and we look forward to your questions and at the end. Leif.
Thank you, Brad. Good morning, everyone. We're excited to be here. I'm here with my colleague, Debbie Rudd, who will contribute a little bit later on in the presentation. And also, you're going to meet, for those of you who don't know, Anne Kale, who has joined our team since the last meeting to analyze the existing lighting and come up with proposed lighting schemes for the plaza. So that's exciting. Brad did a great job of this overview. Really, I don't have anything more to add on this one. We're going to zoom in on the plaza proper and go through some features. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on previously discussed elements that seem to have good consensus at this point. I want to get through to talk about some new things, including the lighting and some ideas we want to share with you for art. So that's the plan. We can always come back if you have specific questions. But here we are zooming in on the plaza. You can see that it's becoming more refined. This is the first sort of view of like this you've seen so far. The kind of big thing to point out right here is kind of the refinement of some of the geometry. You can see the curves while still sort of paying some homage to the horseshoe configuration. You can kind of see it's evocative of that, but it's we've added a little more fine detail to the arcs and everything to make it a little more classic and traditional looking. So that's, I'm sure that's fairly evident to people as they first look at this plan. These are sort of the key elements to the space. You can see that the existing pepper tree in front of City Hall, that's the darker large tree, and then kind of starting at the arcade and going clockwise around quickly. The arcade that we've talked about at length in the past, with the stage, like a low platform stage in front, oriented kind of towards State Street, a crossways on the plaza, the splash pad, the kiosk down in the bottom right, which we'll be bringing up in a little bit. The restroom just makes it onto this view on the bottom right there in stock placita. That would be a modest sized restroom with a shed roof against the blank wall there. We're moving around to the sort of the dining scene on that bottom edge. I think for orientation purposes, you can see the compass rose in the top left of screen. I'm going to refer to the sort of the Casa de la Guerra end as the north end, even though it's not exactly, just for orientation. So there's the State Street side would be the west. There's a row of trees along there that we've kind of made a little transparent so you can see through them, but each tree is sitting in a raised planter with seating around the edge of it. So each tree has some plants at the base of it, some greenery, and seating opportunity all the way along that edge. And then the last two things, which we're going to be talking about in a little more depth, is the art piece in that sort of circle in the middle in front of City Hall, and the art nodes, which are those kind of brown circles you can see. And then this is a sort of a little schematic overlay. This is based on input we had from one of our stakeholder groups, the Old Spanish Days. So you can see the white festival tents around the perimeter of the plaza. This is based on sort of a schematic arrangement that they provided to us and how they could reimagine Fiesta working. So you can see it's really flanking the whole plaza with leaving an opening where the arcade is, because that's where they could do their performances and music. This is just one of many events that are potentially going to be in the plaza, of course, but we wanted to show you this because we know they're a primary user historically of the plaza, and if they can lay out an event similar to this, where our assumption is that most events could be worked out in perhaps a similar way. So building on top of that, you can see the need for our sort of infrastructure to support these types of events and other plaza uses over time. We're anticipating doing a sort of a utility loop in and out of the plaza, connecting back to De La Guerra Street with some strategically placed utility hookup connections, whereby events could plug in and have power, water, sewer distributed where they need it and sized accordingly. The other design goal is to mitigate for the problem you often see in cities where paving over time gets dug up, cut up, repatched, and never quite matches again. So the goal is to have removable paving on top of that corridor wherever it finally ends up, but it'll be somewhere schematically in that corridor. So brick pavers or other things that are not mortared in, so that they can be popped out, maintenance can be done on a pipe and replaced much more seamlessly. I'm going to hand over to Debbie briefly to talk about the kiosk.
Hi, everyone. So the kiosk, one of my favorite parts of the plaza, because I really feel like this kiosk is a key to activating the plaza so we don't end up with a beautiful plaza with no people. So at the last meeting, there were a couple questions, and what we did is reached out to Nina Johnson in the city administrator's office, and we referred to Nina because of her connection to the downtown businesses, and she was also involved with the AIA charrette. And Nina helped me reach out to, we brainstormed, what kind of business would be good for this location. We want a business that would have synergy with existing nearby businesses with minimal competition. And Nina had some ideas. She reached out to a local business. We wanted to truth test it to see, is this a big enough space? Do they think it's viable? How would that operate? And kind of create that vision that we were lacking of what could be in the spot. So they were very excited about it. And it was a business that Nina felt wouldn't be in direct competition with businesses downtown as much as other businesses might be. And it's a business that could, in the morning, serve coffee and baked goods, attract the parents and the business people. In the afternoon, it could morph into more of a lunch type snack. And then in the evening, more hors d'oeuvres or cheese plates to really keep the activity from morning through evening. We had also talked about creating some historic information, and we thought about when the kiosk is closed up, the panels that close that kiosk could all be historic panels. And so as you walk around the kiosk, you would actually be getting a story of the history of De La Guerra Plaza. So I guess that's it. I just wanted to be able to let you know that we did truth test it and we have been reaching out. Of course, the exact business would not be determined for till much later, but it is good to know that it works and it's something that seems to be quite viable.
Thanks, Debbie. Moving on. You probably noticed when I shared the plan view a little earlier that the paving materials are starting to be expressed a little more accurately in the renderings. Here is a family of materials that we are considering, and we'd like to hear the committee's input on this. They're all very natural, real materials, I guess with the exception of the concrete, but the top two photos you see are, the top left is from El Paseo looking across De La Guerra Street to City Hall and the Plaza. This was suggested by a couple of folks actually, the notion of continuing this paving treatment from El Paseo across into the Plaza to really try to knit those spaces together. It's an idea we think is a very good one. So you'll see when we come back to the plan later on, you'll see that that sandstone pavement alluded to in the Plaza itself. The bricks on the bottom left, we got feedback that bricks, there didn't seem to be much love for sort of the red brick that you see sort of around State Street as much. So we're looking at tones more in the browns and the blonde tones, very similar to what you see in natural variation in sandstone. And we imagine brick being used in large fields in the Plaza itself for its utility and its ability to be removed and replaced very easily. The sort of that strip metal detail you see second in from the bottom right, that's cast iron details that we imagine decorative storm solutions so that it's integrated into the design and not just Caltrans grates scattered around. So we're looking at using the sort of the stormwater infrastructure as part of the design elements. The planters that I alluded to that we're showing around the trees and sort of raised planter wells are an opportunity for some tile inlay or tile veneer. That's the photo on the top right. And the bottom right is an idea we're interested in your opinion on for some specific key accent areas, such as around the focal points in the center of the plaza, that some treatment like this very traditional mosaic effect could be used as borders for things just to set them off and give it a little more classiness. Moving on to the trees, those plant lovers out there will be pleased that we're not punting this one anymore. We keep saying they're not picked yet, they're not picked yet. Well, today we'd like to share 3 potential species for the trees in the plaza. These are the 3 we'd like to talk about. They all appear on the EPV guideline checklist, and they're all chosen because of their sort of visual appeal, their scale, and their suitability for urban spaces. So they don't have invasive roots. They're relatively clean, and they have predictable structure. So when they're planted in a row or in an alley, they have strong architectural quality to them as well. Nathan Slack, the city arborist, has also sort of been privy to this discussion and is supportive of the 3 trees. So the first one is a Palo Verde. It's about a 20-foot high tree. It's very airy, which we're excited about because of its potential to sort of glow when the lighting gets implemented, which Anne can talk about later. You can see on the right, it has very beautiful branching from a low point. So if we can encourage that sort of vase-shaped growth pattern, you can get some beautiful effects like you see on the left there. It can be found, Nathan gave us a few pointers on where you could go look at these yourself if you're interested. And this one's actually not far from the site on De La Guerra, between Anacapa and Santa Barbara streets. And we can follow up with addresses if anyone's curious. Second one is the floss silk tree. This is a larger tree, but very striking. I'm sure most people are familiar with these. You see them frequently as dramatic trees in the landscape from the freeway. Pink flowers that are almost like orchids, and they have pretty interesting bark. They kind of have green trunks when they're young, and then they eventually mature into images like you see on the middle and the left. But if you can picture a row of these down the edge of the plaza, they could be pretty spectacular too. They are, according to Nathan, on the 2400 block of Santa Barbara Street and the 200 block of West Yananali. They're briefly deciduous. All these are briefly deciduous, so that there would be periods of the year when they're not fully leafed out, which is not a bad thing in a plaza because it allows sun through in the coldest months. And then the last one is the golden trumpet tree. Again, it's similar to the Palo Verde. You can see it's got sort of a vase-shaped structure. Beautiful large blooms. Blooms in spring. This one's a bit unique. It blooms when it's lost its leaves. So the whole tree becomes yellow for a short amount of time, and then when the blooms fall off, the green comes back. I think there might be an example of this at Alice Keck Park, but I would need to verify that. It's about 25 feet tall and wide. So it's a good human pedestrian scale. It's not so large that the canopy's out of sight, out of mind. I think it really brings the plaza down to a nice human scale. All 3 do really. Okay, moving on to art, history, and culture. We heard from Commissioner Drury actually a comment about looking for opportunities to incorporate art into the plaza and ways that other artists could contribute. So it's more of a community-driven exercise. So we've spent some time thinking about that. We have a couple of ideas we'd like to show you, and I just preface this by saying that these aren't strong proposals from us. Because this would have to be driven by the artists to a certain degree. We just want to share some thoughts about ideas that could happen and see if it sparks a conversation. The first one is we have these we're calling them art nodes, these red circles that are highlighted in red down each side of the plaza. This idea would be integrating some sort of art into those nodes that could be things like historical timeline, or it could be other sort of interpretive elements like key points in history, information about the plaza, some sort of cultural expressions. Really kind of a limitless idea, but they could be little nodes embedded in the plaza as you walk around. And the images on the left are just two sort of examples of how that could be executed, sort of bronze or cast iron perhaps. The circles themselves are drawn at about 6 feet across, which would allow for a medallion like you see on the left that's perhaps the size of a manhole cover, like a 3-foot circle with some sort of decorative border or something. The second thing we want to talk about is this art piece in a focal point. This is sort of on the axis of City Hall steps, so very prominent. As you came around the corner from State Street, this would be one of the more prominent things that would grab your eye. This idea is a light sculpture. The image on the left is by quite a renowned artist who does these sculptures. That's actually a metal cylinder, and if you squint hard, you can see that there's writing on it. That writing is etched out, so it's completely, the letters are completely removed from the metal, and that could be poetry, it could be history, it could be some sort of other interpretation, and it's got this particular one has developed a beautiful patina, but it's very simple form. It's basically a cylinder. But the beauty of this is it takes on a whole new character in the evening, and Anne will show you a little more about that later. So it's this notion of after dark, it takes on a slightly different life and really adds a richness to the plaza space. It's one idea. Next idea is more of a traditional sculpture statue that expresses the culture of the history of the space. So in this particular idea, we have some flamenco dancers on some sort of a plinth in the center of that circle. They're anonymous dancers. It's not a specific person from history, but it talks about the history of the space and its current use, frankly. And then that you could riff off that in the paving by making that circle sort of a metaphorical dance floor. You could have bronze inlays of footsteps dancing on the dance floor, and you see those little pairs of red footprints leading off. This is a technique to draw people into the space. If they see some footprints in the paving of State Street, they may be curious where they lead, follow the footsteps in, and then it's pulling them into the plaza. That's another idea. Okay, now I'm going to hand over the controls to Anne, but I'll just briefly introduce her by saying she's come on board in the last, I want to say, month or so to really help us add another element of design quality to the space and looking at it in the evenings. And in her words, you know, painting with light, which I think you're going to be kind of excited by some of the ideas she has to share with you. I think she's probably familiar to a lot of you, but this is a handful of work that she's done around Santa Barbara. So, Anne, I'm gonna let you take over, and then just give me a nod when you need the slides advanced.
Okay, all right. Thank you, and it's really a pleasure to join you all on this terrific project. So let's, Leif, if you could forward. So as Leif suggested, yes, we are painting with light, if you will, because we're really starting with a blank canvas. And our first slide is to show you what's there right now. It's always good to understand where you're starting from and where we want to end up. And on average, right now we have, we do want to consider the lighting from the Casa de la Guerra, which is on the left-hand side. That is the glow coming from underneath the porch eave. We have a couple of our standard city lights. And the standard city lights, you'll see 8 of them within the plaza. And they give very even illumination. It's 0.2 foot candles for those who are interested in the quantity of light there. As a good reference point, a full moon is 0.1 foot candles. And so this is, your plaza right now is twice as bright as a bright full moon. And it's adequate. It certainly meets IES guidelines for a low use plaza. And in some ways our plaza is oftentimes low use, but when Old Spanish Days comes in or other special events that can be planned for the plaza, this would be considered inefficient, and we are looking to at least double this light level, if not triple it, in the center of the plaza. So 0.6. If you want to know what 0.6 foot candles looks like now, if you go over to Historic Placita, that's what the general light level is in the middle of that plaza. And we have some very tall, very slender pole lights in Historic Placita. And then we have some small post-op units in front of the news press. Okay, next slide. So here you get an image of the existing lighting. Again, you'll see Stuart Placita on the lower right. And if you look at the other images, you'll see the lighting throughout the main plaza. And it's just very even illumination. The only interest points we have are when lighting is actually on buildings. City Hall on the upper left is a really good example of that. And so if we really want to draw people into this historic plaza, having more points of interest in the lighting will definitely be a great incentive to enter the plaza. Next slide. So basically what we're doing is here we're explaining what we're going to keep, we're recommending that we keep, and what we recommend taking out. And you'll see that all of the pole lights, the existing pole lights we want taken out. The State Street pole light you'll see on the lower right, that is the pole light that we want to take out of the plaza, but you'll notice that there are going to be some along the perimeter, obviously State Street and the east side of De La Guerra Street. Next slide. So here we're showing where the old pole lights are. They're in purple, are the existing pole lights. And you'll also see we've added the new suggested pole lights. And just to give you a reference of where they are right now and where we're recommending that they come in the future. And you'll notice that we want to pull the new pole lights further away from the center of the plaza. We think, it works really, really well with the paving pattern, but also it helps to open up the plaza and leave more room for other events. So next slide. And here we're showing the sections, or elevations rather, of the existing poles. The existing poles are somewhere between 15 and 16 feet tall. That is to the very top of the pole. And then the next slide shows the proposed new poles. And if you look at the lower right-hand side, you'll see drawings of the two poles that we're recommending. And one is a three-headed pole and the other is a two-headed pole. And the reason why we like bringing in multiple head poles is that we're looking to do a couple of things. One, we think it's a good idea to bring in a pole distinctive to Plaza de la Guerra. I think we want to separate this from the rest of downtown Santa Barbara, that way acknowledging the historic value of de la Guerra Plaza. And the three-headed poles are at the ends. So they help to anchor the plaza and just be a little bit more of an announcement that you're entering the plaza. The two middle poles are just two-headed poles, and we can get away with having just two-headed poles because whenever you have a grid of lighting, the center is always the brightest. So it's always good to anchor the perimeter with more light, and you get more even illumination across the plaza itself. Also, you'll notice that these post top units or pole top units have hats on them, lids. That way we can keep within the dark skyline ordinance. Okay, next slide. So here we have our poles. And we are also introducing a couple of other new lighting features here. Obviously, we're going to light the new arcade. That is on the upper right-hand side. And we want to reintroduce new small pole lights along the right-hand side near the south end of the plaza. The pole that you see there on the right-hand side is the pole that we use in front of the Libero. The fixture that we would be introducing here would also have a solid hat. So again, we would have dark sky compliance. But also notice that along the perimeter, this fixture, we're going to be increasing the lighting on the perimeter buildings. And that is one of the ways to really help bring the plaza alive. First of all, just establishing a brighter perimeter, it just adds more interest. And we want to create, you remember I said the plaza is just deadly even all the way across. That is boring. So by bringing the poles closer to the buildings facade themselves start to take on brightness and become more lively. We also really want to bring in some landscape lighting. So on the left-hand side, here we're suggesting moonlighting the pepper tree. Moonlighting is when you put the fixture, a floodlight, very high up in the tree, and you're lighting down. You're trying to catch as much foliage as you can from the tree. And also you end up with this beautiful dappled lighting effect on the ground. And you can see an example of that. If you look at the grass on that photograph on the left-hand side, you get that dappled lighting effect. On the right-hand side, you're seeing the upper one is where we horizontally light with floodlights the planting, the landscape. You get these great patterns on the white stucco walls. It's a very beautiful effect. And if you want to see what that looks like, you can go to the Placita or small paseo at the Libero Theater that you see there. And then uplight the palms. This is something that we've done on a couple of other projects, and it just brings so much life to the area. And with Stork Placita, one of our goals is to draw people through that placita. It is somewhat underused right now, and just making it more inviting to bring people in through that areaway. Okay, next slide. And then we have our water jet lighting, and the jets are a lot of fun, and they're really a lot of fun when you light them up like this. The next slide. And more trees, and here what we're showing is that you'll see that the leaves themselves of the trees are illuminated, and that is from the pole lights. The pole lights that we are recommending are somewhere between 18 and 20 feet tall, a little bit taller than what we've got right now. A lot of that is to make sure we can get sufficient illumination to the center of the plaza, but also we really want to catch those trees. And life has gone through the different trees, and they all work. But yes, the Palo Verde tree, in terms of lighting, it's a very lacy kind of tree, and the light just filters in so beautifully into those trees. We are also recommending that we have some underbench lighting just to the right of the fountain, and then also to light the face of those planters surrounding the smaller trees and catching that beautiful tile and bringing color into the space. And then projections, why not? They're fun, they're celebratory, and they are things that can be turned on and off or just left on each night. And here we're thinking of a very simple geometric pattern at Historic Placita and also at the western end of De La Guerra Plaza as a way of bringing the activity of nighttime State Street into the plaza. Right now people don't necessarily think of the plaza as a nighttime gathering space, and we definitely want to welcome in, and this is a great way of doing it. And then also the upper, if you could just go back one slide, the upper portion of City Hall to do a projection pattern, very delicate. We are not looking, this is nowhere near a drive-in movie kind of projection. This is just subtle and appropriate to historic Santa Barbara, or bringing in a projection artist really could add a lot to this small area of the facade. And then the next slide. So here we're just showing you the difference between what we're starting with and what we hope to accomplish. And you can see how we have contrast, color, all the great things about enlivening a plaza. And then our final slide, I believe, this is the art lighting that Leif was telling you about. The artist is Jim Sanborn, and you can see that the art piece, very attractive at night, really comes alive at, I'm sorry, attractive during the day, comes alive at night with the projections. So we can think about this type of lighting, art lighting, or we can think of more traditional art lighting, such as statuary lighting. And I believe that brings us to the end of our lighting presentation.
Great. Thank you, Anne. So I'll just quickly, because we really want to get into committee discussion. Thanks for your patience hearing all of that. We have a few more sort of small detail items like that you see on the screen that will be sort of the final step of this sort of conceptualization phase of the project. You can see there, and then after that we'll circle back again with Ann Peterson and Fiesta and other groups as well. This is what we're really interested in getting some feedback from you today. The art nodes, the focal point, which is another art notion, kiosk, the paving materials, and the lighting. So I'll just leave this slide up on the screen. It's a sort of an axonometric perspective of the proposed plaza as it stands currently, which might be a good talking point. So with that, I think I'll either hand it back to Chair Sneddon or Brad. I'm not sure who wants to take it over to lead the discussion.
Thank you. I think it will take both of us. I see Vice Chair Wiscombe, and I just first want to say there's a lot here that we haven't seen previously. There's a lot to think about. We do want to be sure we have time for discussion. And Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Chair Sneddon. I just wanted you to go back to the prior slide. I wanted to finish copying down all the things that were to comment on. So if you could do that before you put thank you. That was all I wanted. Thank you.
And then I'm thinking that some of these topics are so big, like I think we could have a whole meeting on the lighting, for instance, that I think maybe we should take this topic by topic. I was originally thinking we would go through and you would give all your ideas on each of them, but I think some of these will go more quickly than others, and just want to make sure that we leave the space for all of that. So let's just start right off with the art nodes. And I think it's important to be able to hear from everyone. And so the order that we'll go in, and not just to make sure that I'm getting to everyone, I want to confirm we don't have anyone who's only on the phone today, do we? Or is that Mr. Drury?
Yes, that's only me.
Okay, I want to make sure. So
And
yeah.
Chair Sneddon, I'm also just on audio.
Oh, good to know. Okay, and that's Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go through in the order that the names on the agenda, and so we'll start with, if you're ready, Councilmember Harmon, if you want to start the discussion on the art nodes. Oh, and one moment before, do we have public comment?
Chair Sneddon, we don't have public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. So Councilmember Harmon, would you like to discuss the art nodes?
Sure, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I guess I really don't have too much to say on this point other than I really love the idea of having art in this plaza and whatever we can do. I mean, I love the ideas that were presented. I'm a little bit at a loss as to how specifically to give feedback on this, both because I'm not the artist, but I love it. I really like the locations that are proposed here. I think it's great. I think whatever we can do to encourage particularly local artists, if possible, that would be a priority for me. I'm all for it. And I think it's a great opportunity to showcase and bring art into this space. So 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Drury?
Yes, about art nodes.
Yes.
I like the idea, especially those manhole-size flat sculptures and with commemorating various parts of our culture. I'm not in favor of the flamenco dancers. I think that's to be visually intrusive against, even though it would fit the adobe across the street, but it also, you know, the idea of the Spanish hegemony over the Chumash would be kind of brought front and center. I don't think that should be particularly celebrated. So I would not be in favor of the flamenco dancers, but completely in favor of any other art expression in the plaza.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm in agreement with that about the flamenco. And I wanted to make sure as part of the discussion that we really articulate how we are going to honor and celebrate our Chumash history. I think that needs to be an integral part of the plaza. So if as we're sprinkling through on different things, if there are thoughts on that, but I think that's something that's going to take some focus to make sure that we're honoring that history. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Commissioner House on the art nodes, or I suppose we can also talk about the art focal point. Yeah, either.
Good morning. Well, I would like to back up and make a general comment and to remind everybody that this has yet to go before the Historic Landmarks Commission. and not to get too married to what you're seeing in this proposal, because it could very much change when it gets reviewed at HLC. Personally, having spent time in the plaza yesterday, thinking through what I've seen so far, I've watched the videos of the past 3 meetings. I'm fine with the splash pad, and I know that the consensus is that's a good idea, but it seems to me in that location opposite the arcade, it precludes the possibility of having the splash pad on for kids on a hot day and having something going on at the arcade on that stage. And it just seems to me it would be a better location where the art focal point is, just swapping the 2 of those. It also seemed to me from walking around the neighborhood that the fountain from the splash pad would be more visible to people on State Street if it were in that location opposite City Hall, just because De la Guerra Street is much wider than Stork Placida, so you get more of a glimpse of it. So as far as the proposals, I like that internally illuminated steel cylinder with the words cut out of it. I think that's kind of intriguing, and I could see that in the location of the splash pad. That's not intrusive in terms of having an event there. I think it's important to keep in mind that during Fiesta, crazy things happen and people will be climbing on things, and I'd much rather see them hoist themselves up on top of that cylinder than on top of a bronze statue. So that's my comment.
Thank you. And do you feel if those were swapped and the art focal point had some elevation to it, would that get in the way from stage?
I don't see why it would. It's a small element and you're not going to get wet. So, you know, you don't have to keep a distance away from it.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. That is something that we have discussed also about the different locations. Commissioner Drury, yes?
Yeah, I'm going to chime in. I'm really glad that Commissioner House is on this panel. I'm in complete agreement with that suggestion of swapping the splash pad for the art pad. That sounds like a really good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll as we're weighing in on that, keeping that in mind. Vice Chair Wiscombe, if you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
It's been that kind of morning.
It really has been. It's been that kind of week, I think, pretty much. I've seen you a lot this week. So at any rate, so we're talking about the art nodes. First of all, I love the concept. I think it should be local artists. Perhaps it should be a contest. Celebrate our history in the art nodes and celebrate the plaza. I think there's great opportunity there, and I like the bronze inlay, and I really believe that they should be, we should have local artists. We have so many talented artists in this community. We should have them involved in actually the design of those to celebrate, really celebrate our what do we call it, our mission statement, or our purpose statement, I guess is what Mr. Dayton called it originally, so way back when. In terms of the focal point, I am in complete agreement. I now that I've seen that art piece lit up, the cylinder, I think it's really beautiful. My only concern is that we keep it fairly simple and not too busy, because we have a lot going on in this plaza. And after having seen the lighting and the lighting of the splash pad or the proposed lighting, I should say, I think we don't want elements, we don't want your eyes to get too crazy. So I love that. I don't particularly care for the sculpture idea, but I think that cylinder that lights up at night with some simple pattern would be quite elegant in the plaza. So, and that's all we're commenting on now. Is that right, Madam Chair?
So. What do you think about that, Vice Chair? I think some of these discussions will be much, I don't know. did you want to comment on anything else at this time, or we'll keep?
No, what I really wanted to do, I see Councilmember Harmon on here with her hand raised, so I guess she has a comment. I didn't see trees on this list that that Leaf put out, so I didn't know.
It's on my list.
Okay, because it wasn't on that slide that I asked you to put back up. So I think at some point, yeah, we'll need to do trees, but those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And Council Member Harmon?
Sorry, my apologies. Just a quick business question. I've chatted. I'm not sure if anyone's seen my chat. Can someone send me a copy of the presentation so that I can look through this as we have the discussion? I'm having some trouble. If it's possible, it would be really helpful for me to have the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Thank you. I also find that very helpful for meetings, if it's possible. Yeah. And I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I'm wondering, does anybody else see anything in the chat? That's important that we have that. I see no messages there.
Madam Chair, I just wanted you to know that I forwarded to Councilmember Harmon the version I had as of yesterday afternoon, so she should have that in her email.
Thank you. Okay, and then Commissioner Reed, did you have comments on the art nodes or focal point?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Snedden. So on the, I love the storytelling aspect of the art nodes specifically. I think the locations are great. As it relates, I just kind of want to relate the idea at the highest level of the dancing feet. I understand the cultural sensitivities. I think that's a really important consideration. What I love about the concept is how it kind of juxtaposes such a linear, such a sophisticated overall design. And while the splash pad is great, it's the primary, I would say, children's amenity. I think our town, this plaza, only benefits from more of those. The children's or the dancing feet just adds this exploratory kind of discovery element that is so interactive and I think so important to the overall purpose here. So if that specific idea was going to be discarded, I would just make a strong suggestion that we consider an alternative.
Mr. Hess, yesterday when he gave us a draft, there was one that's a pig somewhere, like a totally unrelated, doesn't have to be flamenco dancers, but a pig with feet that go through. So if you have ideas on that, Mr. Hess, yeah.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner Reed, it's up in Seattle, I believe. It's a large pig, and basically there's hoof prints that are in the sidewalk, which is where the idea came from. Agreed. We can come up with a number of different ideas. You're absolutely correct in terms of the concept being interactive and bringing people in. So if it's not flamenco, let's brainstorm as a committee as to what makes sense for Santa Barbara. Thanks.
Great. And just to reiterate, I there's probably going to be split opinion on this, but I love the idea of kind of disrupting the perfect design of this plaza. The feet did that in a really interesting way, and I just think that's exciting. And in terms of the art nodes, if I'd love to see those have some life or attraction for kids. So if the bronze idea is fabulous. It's sophisticated. It's elegant. But if there's a way to consider making that a point of interest for children, I think a primary goal should be attracting families and making this an inviting environment for kids at all hours of the day. And I was also going to suggest considering flipping the splash pad and the art focal point. There's pros and cons to that, but I think that's definitely a good consideration. And that's it for now.
Thank you. And Commissioner Longstreet, I know you need to leave in a few minutes, so you can weigh in on everything at once if you'd like to.
Well, this is mainly what I want to weigh in on, and I think what Mr. House said is very true. This is going to go through review boards, and we all get that. But I would hope as it goes through that all of these considerations are weighed heavily. As far as rotating the splash pad, the consideration that I have is that we're putting it right in front of City Hall, and we're putting it right in front of Chambers, which is active many more times than the arcade will be active. So because it's something that can turn on and off, I'm not sure it blocks the arcade, because when you're having that, you're not going to be having splash pad. It'll just be part of the plaza. As far as art, I always reflect back to the trouble we had in Stork Placita with I think it was King Ferdinand statue. So I would like to stay away from those kinds of cultural representations also. I agree with Mr. Drury completely. I think of it as something where we maybe have rotating appropriate to the timing, like we was tried on State Street, where some things that make people think a different way when the plaza is not in use for some other activity. I love the pieces integrated into the ground, and I was just reflecting on pictures I have in Europe of plazas, and what's always intriguing to me and what I take pictures of is that different pavement and I was really impressed by the beauty of what was introduced today, that it's going to be visual interest and it's going to be lovely. So those are really my ideas. I like the idea of integrating art, but art that is appropriate to the timing. So,
and since since you're going to be leaving, anything specific on the kiosk or the trees?
Not really. I thought the idea of having the kiosk be a focal point when it's closed was a very good idea. I'm glad to see the businesses were brought in. I just have to plead complete ignorance on lighting, but I loved what I saw. I guess the one thing is I have seen that projection lighting in Bonifacio, and it was obviously much gaudier than what we were shown. It's not something I would be that interested in. I think the buildings themselves should be the focal point of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Commissioner Perry.
Good morning, all. Very much in favor of flipping the splash pad from that south end out to where it's visible from State Street. I think that'll create an additional attraction. I like the art nodes. I like the concept behind them. I think that's an opportunity to celebrate both our Chumash and Spanish heritage. And I think we really should incorporate both, because that is truly our foundation, and I have roots in both. Flamingo really came along to Santa Barbara not until the 1980s through Fiesta. So it doesn't have those same roots for us. The stones, the pavers, all wonderful. The one question and concern I have are the seating around the planters. Every time Santa Barbara has installed seating, it's become a nuisance attraction. And I'd hate to see it go in and then pulled out later. I would love to see it put in and preserved somehow. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Peterson.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity to comment. In terms of the art nodes, I think they have a lot of potential. I had a great conversation with the designer at RMM about integrating history throughout the plaza. So I had some initial concerns that, you know, there was going to be a history wall or a history corner by the bathroom, and so I had talked to the designers about a couple of what I think are wonderful projects where history and storytelling is sort of embedded in the experience of the entire place. And one example was the sidewalks in Little Tokyo in Los Angeles, which have embedded iconography related to the Japanese community, and also embedded quotes and embedded you know, a timeline of addresses in front of every building. And I can see that possibility here, that in the pedestrian view, as you're walking through the plaza and you come across these, you know, what are called art nodes, you're also experiencing layers of history in the plaza. So I would hope they could be art and history nodes. I think there's a lot of possibility here for wonderful collaboration between artists and historians about how we can visually do some storytelling about the history of the plaza. So I love that concept. In terms of the art focal point, I think a lot of the comments have already been said. Statues and monuments are just fraught, and why do we really want to do that? I think, and Commissioner Perry pointed out, flamenco even itself is fraught with controversy within the dance world, as, you know, what is the dominant dance tradition of Santa Barbara? And a statue is, you know, it's a selection of one story out of all of the stories that we hold up and we're putting it on a pedestal. And I don't think we need to do that. I do agree with Commissioner Reed about the potential of the footsteps. I think that's been done many wonderful ways around the world. And, you know, one example that I'm familiar with is in Philadelphia, and it's the footsteps of Una Judge, who was an enslaved woman who lived with George Washington and his family, and she escaped and fled. And it shows, it's an Independence Square, and it shows her footsteps as she's running away. And so that, you know, there's possibility there to think about footsteps of people who may have used the plaza differently. Could they be Chumash footsteps as an intervention into our sort of 1920s classical style plaza, and just to show that there were other ways of using this space. So I think there is potential there, and maybe they don't even have to go anywhere. Maybe they go through and past. In terms of the lighting option for the focal point, I think that's really interesting. I do have a question about whether during the daytime, can you actually read the words that are carved out, or are they in reverse so that when they're projected, you can read them only on the ground at night? Because I think it makes it a lot less interesting during the day if it's not readable. And I think maybe the design could be a little more beautiful during the day, or just have a little bit more embellishment to fit our style. But the idea of words, I think, is really powerful. And that's something that I did talk to the designers about, that I think we want a lot of visuals to tell the history, but you know, and it can't be only words. We need to have a combination of words and visuals, but words and speeches in the plaza are a really important part of the history. And I think there are a lot of powerful speeches over time. And you know, I always go back to Pablo de la Guerra's speech in the first California legislature about the rights of the Californios, and holding the Americans up to the ideals of the United States by preserving the rights of the Californios when Santa Barbara became part of the United States. That's a wonderful speech about civil rights. And there are many, many others. And what I liked about that concept is that there's these segments, and words and voices maybe could fit into these different segments to get at that idea of this being a place to come to not only protest, but also to speak about what's important in the community. And to have that right in front of City Hall, I think, is a really cool idea. So those are my comments on the art nodes and the focal point.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'd like to comment on Dr. Peterson's comments. It seems to me that the plaza, I think that it's too rigid in terms of the art nodes. I think if Dr. Peterson, if I'm clear of what she's suggesting, there's an opportunity in the plaza surface to incorporate lots of history in a random fashion. So people wandering around, maybe they could be numbered, and there'd be a little booklet, and they could see, looking straight down on a however big, let's say a 3 foot 3 foot or a 2 foot 2 foot piece of our history, a piece of the shared history, shared cultural history. I think the idea of just 4 art nodes is too little. I mean, that just came in my mind when Dr. Peterson was talking. It's a rich field to explore, and I think that should be at least a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. And so what I'm gathering here from all of our discussion is that we really are supporting the idea of these art nodes and a focal point, and that will over time be further developed, that we very clearly want to honor all the elements of our history. We want the art to be local artists, and we want elements in here that are celebrating free speech, celebrating our history, and make it inviting. I'll weigh in on, I love the art nodes. I think they're really exciting idea. And then the themes of those, whether they're historical or where we go with that. I also like the idea of flipping the splash pad. That's something that to me makes sense. And then the footsteps, once Dr. Peterson mentioned maybe Chumash footsteps, and maybe they could be leading from the ocean to the ocean, or something that ties back to different places, and then maybe extend to other places throughout the city possibly. So I wasn't at first very excited about that idea, but that's growing on me as something that could be interactive and tying in other ways. Or maybe it's like a paseo walk and it goes through different paseos or different ideas. So I think do you have what you need on that topic to move forward?
Yes, Madam Chair, and let's continue.
Let's continue. Okay. And so, let's pay attention to time too, and we will discuss at the end in future meetings, possibly having them be a little bit longer so that we can get this these final portions out. Okay, so then the next would be, well, let's not talk about the kiosk just yet. Let's go into the materials in the plaza. Materials. So we'll go through, and Councilmember Harmon, and this would be for the planters, for the hardscape.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really liked the idea of incorporating the stormwater management. I don't even know the word they use, but incorporating that into the design, that picture, whether it's that specifically or something in a different style. Personally, I think it's really important that we respect our stormwater management practices and incorporate that into whatever materials we use. So that's personally a priority for me. I really like the idea of the planters. I'm looking at that picture. I'm very attracted to it aesthetically. I think it's beautiful. I do recognize what another, I'm sorry, I don't remember who, someone mentioned that there's some issues with when you create seating, that they may become a nuisance. And I want us at some point, or maybe, I'm not sure what the right forum would be, to really think about that, because personally, you know, I think seating is really important in this space in some capacity. But I do recognize that we need to be mindful of how the space is used. So I don't know, that may be a longer conversation, but that is something that occurred to me. But I support seating in general, so I guess that's just a tension that I'm trying to wrap my head around. But I do really like that. I guess is a very long-winded way of saying I find it very beautiful. My eye is drawn to it, and I really like that. So I guess those are my comments for now, and looking forward to hearing from my colleagues, especially those that have design and more aesthetic experience than I.
Thank you. I also really like seating, and I miss when we used to have benches. And I also think it's a larger conversation that we shouldn't do away with seating because of some other issues. We should take care of other issues and have seating. Yeah, thank you for those comments. And Commissioner Drury.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I like everything as presented in the hardscape realm, except for the brick. No brick, please. And I particularly like, once again, I have to invoke Commissioner House's suggestion, the pathway that comes out of the El Paseo and goes across the City Hall. That was something that he suggested we incorporate. And I like that idea. I think it's probably a little less reflective on a hot day than a higher valued in terms of tone. And I like the earth tones of those sort of random patterns of that material. And I think the seating will have to be dealt with sort of on a trial basis. I don't know exactly what the answer is. I like the idea of the mosaic on the planters. I particularly like the ironwork. I believe that was for rain management, water management. So I'm in favor of everything as presented except for the brick.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner House.
I like brick.
Well, of course.
When it gets to HLC, you can hammer that out. Yeah.
Wrestle it out.
Well, yes, going back to knitting things together with the street in Spain, that was an idea I had after the initial kickoff in the Casa de la Guerra, and I walked around, and that just seemed to make sense to me to extend that texture in street in Spain over across the street into City Hall and to basically define the perimeter of that space. We have to keep in mind that's very rough stone there and would not meet ADA requirements. On the other side of Casa de la Guerra, there's a little patio that's flagstone that's a five-point pattern, which is smoother. So, you know, it wouldn't be exactly the same as this, but it'd be similar. The only thing I don't like here is the salt finish concrete, which would be the second from the left on the bottom. That's not a material we typically approve at HLC. You know, in terms, well, first of all, I seem to recall from an earlier video of one of your meetings that the soil in this location is not very permeable. So we're not looking to use brick for permeable pavers. But you know, the nice thing about brick is is that true, Brad?
Yes, that is absolutely true. There is no permeability in the soil.
Okay. The other nice thing about brick, you know, considering you're going to have that utility access and you need something removable and replaceable, brick is so modular, so it just makes perfect sense. We don't like to see concrete interlocking pavers in EPV. So, you know, brick certainly fills the bill for that. As far as seating, raised planters, that was something I was going to bring up in a discussion of landscaping, but I think having the raised planters is just excellent. I'm so glad to see that because I'm thinking of the renovation of Paseo Nuevo, especially off of Canon Perdido Street at the Nordstrom entrance. There's a stucco wall all around that, and there are new large olive trees that were planted in there. And the added benefit of the raised planter is it gets the tree up higher, and so you don't have to wait as long for it to grow large enough that you can have tables and chairs under them. And also gets pedestrian traffic off of the planters, because in Fiesta, those are going to get trampled. So I think having the surrounding planting up higher and having the landscape lighting up higher off the ground surface is a great idea. I think as long as they're round planters, it's not as conducive to stretching out and taking a nap on them. So I don't so much see a problem with people being able to sit. You know, we might consider, instead of, I mean, a normal seat height is 19 inches off the floor and a kitchen countertop is 36. You know, if there was something like 36, you can hop up to that, but it doesn't, I don't know, it's a discussion to be had. But I like the idea of the tile. or sandstone. In this application, stucco wouldn't be appropriate because it's going to get dirty with people sitting on there and their shoes are going to get it dirty. So sandstone or tile would be great, or a mix of the two. So that was just the surface materials. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say on surface materials.
Thank you, Commissioner House. And Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, I'll start with brick. I think we've had problems with brick elsewhere in the city, and it kind of becomes irregular. I'm not real fond of the brick. I like the continuation of the pavement from El Paseo, perhaps in the tones. Also, that's an ADA issue, so we've got to make sure that this is comfortable for everyone to use. So something similar to that would be great. That is totally accessible for people with disabilities. I love the cast iron detail for the stormwater grates. I think that's very attractive. I like the planters raised with the tile inlay, and I agree with Commissioner House that it looks like they're wide to sit comfortably on, but not to actually lie down on. And so I think that's really worth the risk, that they will be used properly. And I think as we get more people in the plaza, that's really going to help the situation. I appreciate the comments. I don't know, I think it was Commissioner Drury who made the comment that it should be light tones. I really strongly feel it should be light tones. I don't know about maintenance. We saw the utility plan concept drawing, and we've got to pick something where the maintenance is where we can easily access the utility zone for hookups, etc. So we're going to have to pick something in those areas that's removable and works well for that. And I think those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Reed.
Yes. So I think using as much natural material as possible is the best direction. I would say I am as strongly against brick as I could possibly be. So my vote would be no brick. And then I love the built-in seating. I love the planters, the seating. I love the seating around the splash pad. And I'm confident that in the final design, this plaza will be activated to such a degree that those potential risks in some of the built-in environment will be manageable. I don't think it'll be the same problem we see elsewhere. We don't see that as much in Paseo Nuevo because it's activated and it's well managed. I think the great opportunity with the planter boxes, the built-in seating, is similar to the art nodes. I think we can really touch on the vitalities of our mission statement. They're great opportunities to not just have beautiful art, but to tell a story. And I know at a certain point we hit that point of diminishing returns. It's just overboard. But I'm confident, we have a design team that can balance this. And I think, in terms of social, cultural, historical, even in not just in these raised installations, but even in the iron grate, we can touch on some of those. And so I love the mosaic. I think you can get really creative with that. And I would just say, wherever possible, add splashes of color that bring life to that storytelling, our history, the culture, the social elements. And it can be done in a subtle way, but really great elements that are being presented here. So exciting. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Perry?
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute. Dr. Peterson and whoever else spoke about incorporating history into the groundwork there, absolutely brilliant. So completely support that. I think it's going to lend a whole lot of interest to the plaza. I'm curious as to how the infrastructure for booths will go into the hardscape. Right now, there's 20 utility boxes down there that wouldn't look very attractive in what we're looking at right now. I like the idea of the planters. I think that's going to give you natural seating, and as Commissioner Wiscombe said, they're conducive to sitting. They're not conducive to sleeping. So all the ideas are absolutely wonderful, and I also support the no brick concept. I leave it to those with an artistic vision to preserve the street in Spain and the way it flows out of the El Paseo.
Thank you. And we'll have Mr. Hess maybe answer the questions about utility boxes in a few minutes, but we are getting close to the end of time there too. I think we're closing in on not support for brick. So Dr. Peterson on materials and the planters.
Sure, just really briefly for me, I also support Commissioner House's suggestion to focus on connectivity with El Paseo with obvious modifications made for accessibility. I also like the idea of continuing our beautiful colored tile tradition into some of the decorative elements into the plaza. And I do support the limited seating opportunities. I love the iron grill work. I'm not, that design doesn't seem like a great fit, but I see a lot of possibilities there for making even that very pragmatic element of the plaza something beautiful. So that's it for me.
Thank you. And then I'll wrap that with I'm in agreement. I'm not a fan of the brick, and I do like the continuation. Of course, it needs to be ADA compliant. Love the iron work, and also agree that with a different design element. The seating, I mean, to me, the plaza is all about seating, and I have missed the benches. I think it's a place that I am looking forward to. Can't wait to just sit and reflect and spend time, and to have that be a seating option, but not as comfortable for lying down. But I think we just need to activate it, and that is a bigger discussion. But I don't think that our design should be prohibitive. They should be inviting and having people come. Just as a general comment, when I look at the big picture of the plaza, and when I look at these materials too, I just so much want to see a little bit more green. I don't know if that can be green material between the pavers, or if that's not the style here, but just an overall comment that I don't want to go, even with the trees and the planters, that something about the big broad space in the middle still to me wants a little bit more green, but I don't know on that. So I want to check in on time here because it is 10 o'clock, a little bit after 10 o'clock, and lighting is a big topic unless we have sort of general comments to go through. And then Mr. Hess, do you have an idea, or Vice Chair Wiscombe, on how you'd like to handle the last bit of the meeting here? I want to be respectful of people's time.
I have an idea, but if Vice Chair Wiscombe would like to speak, that's fine too.
Speak away, Mr.
Okay.
Hess.
Well, we have plans to have an extended meeting on December 18th, which is our next meeting. We'd like to make that meeting 2 hours, maybe even 2.5 if we have these larger topics to cover, and then have a break sometime in the middle just for everyone. I think we're flexible on our end. It's really up to the scheduling and if it works for everyone. But we have, you know, trees, lighting, and the kiosk as major topics still to cover. So I guess because it's not too far away, it's about a month away. I think rather than try and schedule a special meeting, I think we should just postpone these 3 topics for the next meeting, allow for a little bit more time. We can send out the proposal for, or not the proposal, the presentation to members if they need it. And then they can formulate their own thoughts, opinions, and we can answer questions over this next month. And then hopefully we'll all be just that much more prepared for that topic come next meeting.
Thank you. I think that, yeah, Vice Chair Wiscombe. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to make, so when we meet on the 18th, which I think is a fabulous idea, and extend the meeting to 2.5 hours, I would suggest 2.5, and if we don't take it all, that's fine. But when you send out the, I think it would be helpful to have a PDF of the slideshow for all the committee members, and I just want to make sure you're not going to change any slides for lighting, trees, or kiosk at all that we've seen this week. If you would just send us the whole presentation, I think it would be most helpful to us before we meet on the 18th.
So Vice Chair Wiscombe, we will definitely send out the PDF for sure to the committee members of exactly what you've seen today. How about we promise that if we do make iterations, that we send that out as well, just to make sure that as things develop, which they will, that you're all getting the most up-to-date information. Is that fair? Okay. And sorry, we didn't, I mean, some of these refinements in this presentation are actually sometimes just to the day before, because there's so much work that's going on behind the scenes. So my apologies for not being able to do that this week. We will definitely do that for this next meeting.
Appreciate that. And I think I just, it's so, as we're getting sort of close to the end here with this, it is important that we're really able to discuss each of these elements. So I think that's a good idea to hold those over. I suppose if anybody has sort of a last comment on what we've discussed or going into next week, if you wanted to turn your camera on or hear your voice so that we could, we won't go around formally, but if there's any sort of other comment you wanted to make at this time, we could do that.
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair?
We may also need to check with public comment too. I'm not sure if there's, okay.
Yeah. Commissioner?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, I'm in favor. So December 18th would go from 8:30 to 11. Is that correct? 2.5 hours. Is that what we're talking? I think that's fantastic. I'd be in favor of that. Thank you.
Okay. And do we have any public comment?
Chair Sneddon, we do have public comment. Let me just take back presenter mode. One moment.
And if all of our committee members who have camera want to turn your camera on while we're hearing public comment.
Alrighty, here, let me go to the timer. One moment. Mary Days, I will unmute you and you have 2 minutes to speak.
Mary Louise Days, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. This is a very, very busy plan. It has many elements. Some of them are quite fun, taken from other communities and artists. I'd like to remind everyone, of course, that Santa Barbara is very special in its own way. That's why you're putting so much time in on this. And we don't need to think of emulating other communities, but to respect our visual benefits and history. I am concerned about the proposal to move the historic palm tree. It was one that was right next to the original City Hall. I think that has to be looked at with great care. And there seem to be a great number of trees proposed, and we should be careful about blocking the views of our historic buildings by having so many trees around, hampering photography and so forth. The art focal sample of the dancers, of course, that would not be historically appropriate, and that has been discussed. You may not even need an art focal piece. I am looking forward to detailed plans of the arcade, which I still can't fully understand its use, and the tented festival tent areas. The initial drawing today showed a double row of tents right in front of Casa de la Guerra, and that could be a problem during old Spanish days. Your other discussions have been very helpful about paved surfaces and recognizing the history, and of course we've got to be so careful about being accurate with that. And I too miss the idea of having some green lawn in the center of it, and many other people in town feel the same way. Thank you very much.
Any other public comments? And thank you, Ms. Days. I don't know if my microphone was muted when I said that.
We have one more public commenter, Barry Remus.
Thank you.
Please unmute yourself, and you have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, committee members and Chair Sneddon. This is Barry Remus, and I'm speaking as an individual, but also for COAST, the Coalition for Sustainable Transportation. This is fantastic, really, to see this design come to life. Really want to commend Mr. Hess and all the design team at RM to really take the visions and collect them together, and all the input from the commission here, or the committee. Really like the idea of the lighting elements. It's really exciting to see lighting emanating from under the seating, under the planters, and in the water jets as well. And I think it seems to be a good idea to flip the locations between the water jets and the art focus, really to be able to just enhance that element of the stage for when festivals return. In terms of the pavement treatments, totally agreed about the brick and just creating that kind of Mediterranean vibe going on. The mosaic is really fantastic. The old world look. From stormwater management, the metalwork, while stylish, obviously just want to, and it really has a classy look to it, want to also make sure that the city is taking a look at the liability risk. For example, I don't know how often someone may be walking with high heels in De La Guerra Plaza, but you want to make sure that we don't avoid tripping and sprained ankles or worse. So to keep that in mind. And of course, planting landmark, landscaping work looks fantastic there. Really like the idea of really being able to connect in with the State Street Promenade, bringing pedestrians and also cyclists eventually, and hopefully liking the idea of seeing the bike parking and ADA access, of course, being able to accommodate everybody in the plaza. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments. Thank you.
Chair Sneddon, I think we have one question. Let me just.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, that concludes public comment.
Okay. Thank you. And do we have any final comment? I know Commissioner House, you had your camera on, and then we should get close to adjourning soon here, going over time a little bit, but Commissioner House.
I was just going to comment that I noticed that the shade structures from the last meeting have gone away.
Yes, our input matters.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And Vice Chair Wiscombe.
I just would like to comment to thank Mr. Hess and the design team. I think you're doing a fantastic job of kind of taking our comments and responding to them. So thank you very much.
I agree. Commissioner Perry? I don't know that he knows that his camera is on. Mr. Hess.
Well, I want to thank you for the compliments. RRM is doing a fantastic job. Our consultants are doing a fantastic job. We have an amazing staff, and this has been an exciting project for sure. But you know, the committee needs to be commended too. This is an outstanding group of people with wonderfully thoughtful and just a great perspective, and you're all working really well together, and it's making our job that much easier when we get such really clear and great feedback. So thank you. We look forward to this next month and speaking to you in December. So have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you. With that, we are adjourned.